So welcome to our June branch meeting. Here's the agenda for tonight. I will be doing about our branch and some announcements and some Zoom tips, and then we'll get right to the feature presentation. Unfortunately, you have me for the whole hour to an hour and a half. So if my voice gets hoarse, I hope you'll be able to forgive me from doing all this talking. So the Durham Region branch is located in Northminster United Church in Oshawa. In normal times, our office and library is open on the third and fourth Friday of each month. Our website is durham.ogs.on.ca, and on our website, you'll always see our meeting information. And down in this section here, for this particular meeting, this is where the link to YouTube will be in a couple of days. Or you can go directly to youtube.com and put in the search field Durham Region Branch, and then choose the one with the tombstone. That's our channel, and we've got 3 or 4 years worth of meetings up there right now. As long as the speaker gave us permission, you'll be able to watch those meetings as well. This is what the channel looks like once you click on the tombstone. Our upcoming meetings, the next one will be the 8th of September. Please note the date change, and the speaker is still to be announced. Conference 2020 is called now A New Vision. It's this week. They're doing fast tracks presentations last night, tonight, and Wednesday night and Friday night. Thursday night is the regular OGS webinar, and Saturday, Sunday are the ones with the full lecture stream. You can still sign up and join in if you wish. Here's a few more of the details. I suggest you go and check out the schedule. It's a pretty interesting mix of talks. Now, just a few Zoom hints. You can click on the chat and the participant windows if you wish, but please don't touch the share screen. Your control bar, this black control bar, if you're on an iPad, it will show near the top. And if you're on a a laptop or a desktop computer, it will show across the bottom. Please make sure your camera has a line through it, and please make sure that your microphone has a line through it as well. That means that the camera's off and the microphone's off, which reduces the background noise. If you click on the chat, a panel will appear where you can post some questions. If you have questions or comments you wish to post, please go to the bottom of the chat window and click on the down arrow button beside the word everyone. And in your choices, there is one labeled questions, and DeLong is monitoring that for us. And this is where you need to send your questions. If you send them to me, I'm sorry, I'm not looking there. So give me a couple of seconds, and I'm going to switch over to my DNA PowerPoint. So my screen should be showing the title page. Anne, can you tell me if you can see that? And Paul?
Yes, it just appeared.
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you very much. I'll continue on now. So this is the agenda for my meeting tonight, my talk tonight. We're going to do a very brief review of the background, talk about the next steps. In with the next steps, you're going to be seeing a lot of company tools and third-party tools. And at the very end, we're going to talk about you must do genealogy as well. Very quickly, we have 3 types of DNA tests. The Y chromosome. This traces the paternal line, father to son. Let me get my laser pointer back. Father to son to son to son. It passes down virtually unchanged, although there can be some mutations about every 5 or 6 generations. The second test is mitochondrial DNA test, which goes down the maternal line. But we women are generous enough that we let our sons have our mitochondrial DNA as well, but only the daughters pass it on down to the next generation. So mother to daughter to daughter to daughter. It's a very stable DNA and mutates extremely rarely. So you could have the exact same mitochondrial DNA as your grandmother and your 15 times great-grandmother. And so that you can see that matches on mitochondrial DNA sometimes can't be found out in the paper trail. It's not very useful. The third test is the autosomal DNA test. That's what we're talking about tonight. I shouldn't say most, all of the companies are doing this test. It covers all your family lines, but it doesn't go very deep. It only about 5 or 6 generations from the test taker. So first, let's prepare for action. When you've done a test, make sure you upload a family tree. Make sure that tree is broad, includes siblings and cousins. The more cousins, second and third ones that you can place in your family tree from paper records, the better the tools and the DNA companies work. Filling your tree out for 5 or 6 generations will also highlight the holes where you have unknown surnames. In my case, my strictly paternal line, my great-grandfather is a mystery man. His name is John Brown, and yes, go ahead and laugh. So you know that the 5th and 6th generations in that line, I'm going to be missing surnames, the married-in names. And actually, I'm probably even missing John's surname because I'm becoming more and more convinced he was on the lam and changed his name. So take the time to really fill out all your information on all your other lines so that when you get mystery matches, you're pretty sure that they're going to be on your brick wall line. If you can, try and bring descendancy research down to at least the grandparent generation of your DNA test takers. It really helps with the linkages. Now here's the key point. If you've got 4, 5, 10, 15,000 matches, you don't need to keep track of all of them. Only your best matches. Look at your 2nd to 4th cousins, which is approximately a range of 400 centiMorgans down to 50 centiMorgans. And the reason you do this is that the companies can pretty well pick up all your 1st and 2nd cousins and most of your 3rd cousins. By the time they get out to 4th and 5th cousins, it really drops off because the genetic passage down of segments of DNA is getting way too diluted. Keep in mind, though, you're probably going to have a lot more matches at the 4th cousin level because you've got a lot more 4th cousins than you do 1st cousins. So here's some questions to ask yourself to see if you're ready to go? Have you checked out your company's website? Have you clicked on all the links? Have you found out what's showing under those links? Can you find your match's genealogical information if they've posted a tree? Can you find the match's genetic details? The company provides those, but each company's different in where they'll put that. Helpful but not necessary is testing other family members. So, can you identify your best matches? Moving on to what's your goal, you probably should have a focus for each session you do in DNA. I know you need to find a common ancestor, but let's turn that upside down. You want to find a cousin that will allow you to identify that common ancestor. So here are the next steps. Now, as I go through these steps, I'm going to be showing screenshots at Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage. These are the companies that I am most familiar with. I'm also going to intersperse some tools from a third-party site called DNA Painter. Then, after we've done a little exploring with some of those tools, we're going to go out and we're going to find clusters of cousins. You can also call this a genetic network, and we're going to use that genetic network to make a more powerful tool by clustering those cousins together. And of course, along the way, you've got to be organized. And at the very end, you have to do genealogy to gather new evidence to support or rule out the proposed couple. Now, I say second and third cousins are gold. Known second and third cousins are platinum. The second cousins will cut the lines to research on your family tree down to 1/4 of your tree. And that focuses on your great-grandparent levels, where you have 4 couples. Now, most genealogists can find their 4 great-grandparent couples. So you should be able to identify your second cousins. Third cousins cuts the amount of work down to 1/8 of your tree. But on the other hand, you're dealing with 8 ancestral couples. But even so, hopefully you will be able to sort them into clusters and find them. We all know that siblings aren't very helpful in general, but in genealogy, they can't really sort out your ancestral lines, but they become very helpful when you get out to 4th and 5th cousins, because although you may not match more than 50% of your 4th cousins and 10% of your 5th cousins, your sibling might, and that could be very helpful. You need to have a linked tree, and so does your match, to make the most of some of these tools as I'm going along. I'm going to start with searching by name and location. So here on Ancestry, on my match page, up in the top right, there is a search button that you click, and you get this drop-down window. You can put in a surname or a location, and Ancestry is going to go search your match's trees. And they'll come up with a list of people who have that name or that location in their linked tree. On Family Finder, on your match page, you have to go to Advanced Search. Now keep an eye on this ancestral surname column. In Advanced Search, you can put in a surname, a username, or your match's name, or an ancestral surname. Now, this is based on that column that's titled Ancestral Surnames. It's not on any tree that has been uploaded. So these surnames are user inputted, and not everybody enters them, unfortunately. I really wish that Family Tree DNA would search in the user's trees. However, you can link your matches into your tree on Family Tree DNA, and this will at least let the company sort your matches into paternal and maternal lists. At MyHeritage, on your DNA page, on your DNA match page, there is a small magnifying glass at the top of your list of matches. If you click on that, you can enter a name. In this case, I've entered the name Gould, and the resulting list will have that surname common to you and your match. And it will show up in each match's little snippet. So now I'm just going to show a few shortcuts that some of these companies have installed in their product using, I believe, artificial intelligence. Mostly this sits at Ancestry and MyHeritage. And what it does is they automatically look through trees and give you hints that you may need to research. Family Tree is a little more problematic. They're a little bit behind the times here. So in your DNA match page, you will find some results, some hints, the leaf hints, right on your match list that shows that you have a common ancestor, or they have a suggestion for a common ancestor in that match's tree. If you click on the leaf or on person's name or picture, you'll get into the match page where you can actually look at their tree. Like this one. So this is my cousin, D.A. He's a known second cousin, but you'll notice they've come up with a suggestion for these two people. And what they've done is they have actually compared our two trees and found this couple in common. They've circled it in green and put a little leaf on it. And then everybody else with that surname and other shared surnames are marked in green. Here's one that I don't exactly know how he matches, and he's got a hint for common ancestors, but there's nothing in his tree. So where's that hint come from? Well, it's come from a process that Ancestry calls through lines, where they've gone through your tree and every other tree on the public trees on the Ancestry, and even some private but searchable trees. And they've come up with this suggestion, and it is a couple that I recognize. They are on my tree. And I do have a vague memory of Winfield somewhere in the family line that my grandmother talked about. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, fill out the Winfield line a little bit more, and see if I can come up and bring his line up to this common ancestral couple. There's another way to explore the through lines as well. You don't have to be just on your match page. You can go out on your main DNA page, click on this, and go explore all the suggestions that they have for all of your ancestral ancestors. They'll even do it by singles, not just by couples. Going back to Family Tree DNA, in that common ancestral column, this is the result that I get when I actually can't see a shared surname, but I can click on these entered ancestral surnames, and I'll get a list. And this is only 8H for this particular person. But you'll notice the Craig is in blue, and that's because I was searching on Craig. Now, in the past, when I looked at this column, any ancestral surname that was in common with my match would be bolded and put at the top of my list. I'm not sure I'm seeing that anymore, but at least they may do that, and you'll have to check that out. At MyHeritage, they have a tool that combs the family trees on the site. It combs family search family tree. It combs genie trees, and it combs some of their records, I believe the Smart Match records, to give you some hints, or as they call it, the theory of family relativity. You can get to the theory of family relativity by clicking here on your matches square, or you can click on the Review DNA Match button. And what you see in the match page is you have a side, they have a side. In the theory of family relativity, it shows the common ancestors. And if you want to see the full theory and all the steps they've taken along the way in formulating this theory, you click View Full Theory, which will bring up something like this. So here's my tree. They've done a linkage over to another tree. They're 90% confident that this Hiram is the same as this Hiram. And if you click on it, they will show you why. So with all of these tools to help you narrow into the most recent common ancestor quickly, again, they're only as good as the information provided in the trees that they look at. You still have to do the validation, and you have to look at the resources and sources. So our next step is to evaluate trees that you find for your matches. And hopefully you find a lot. Here's DA again. I've gone into his actual tree on Ancestry. This is our common couple. And it's really easy to evaluate my connection to DA because I have him in my tree. We share great-grandparents. Now, the best way to view someone's tree, I find, is to put them into the pedigree view, which is this button here. You click on that, and then you can easily see your match, his parents, his grandparents, his great-grands, and his 2 times great-grandparents. And it's much easier to review in that view. Still on Ancestry, I've gone back to my kind of unknown cousin, Dustin. And you can actually click on Expand Tree to see Dustin's full tree and see if anything else shows up. And I've already had a note in there, so I can just click on that note and read it. And I've already gone through this and made a note to myself to check for the marriages of the McGuire daughters. On the matches page in Family Tree DNA, I have clicked on the paternal link. Remember I said that Family Tree DNA will at least separate your matches into paternal and maternal if you've done some linking in your tree to some of your close matches. So underneath the person's name, which is blank here, There's several icons. The man in the blue square, that tells me it's a paternal match. The blue envelope links to the match's email address. The blue paper and pen is a note field. And the tree indicates the presence or absence of a linked family tree. If it's gray, there's no tree. If it's blue, there is a tree. At the bottom here, LL does have a tree. Mind you, she's a fourth to remote cousin, so I'm not sure I'm going to find anything, but let's have a look. So when I go to a tree, I notice that we have parents, grandparents, great-grands, and 2 times great-grandparents. But if I want to see the 3 times, which would be fourth cousins, I have to click on these links. Unfortunately, this is really clunky. Family tree DNA doesn't have an easy way to go back to your match. And it's really extremely time consuming to use this. I have also got a search field, and I did search on it. I searched on my paternal surnames and the locations of Lambton and Kent counties, but I got no results. I chose a third option, which was to click on each one of these names and look at the profile page. And I only came up with one person from Canada, and that was Laurie Jane Robertson right here. Unfortunately, it's Fort Erie, so not super close to where I know my families are. But I have one more tool to talk about at Family Tree DNA, and it's pretty unique. You have to go back out to your main home page, and under autosomal DNA, there's a tool called the matrix. You need to have written down your list of surnames of your matches. Then you go in, and in your match window here, you highlight your matches, click add, and put them over on your selected window. So I've done that for my 4 top paternal matches. You click on the link and you get a matrix. So going across the top here, we can notice that Betty Lou matches Jack and Colleen. Jack matches Betty Lou, Colleen, and LL. Colleen has the same matches, and LL only matches Jack and Colleen. So it's pretty sure that LL, since Colleen is a known third cousin once removed on the Collier line, it's pretty sure that LL is on that particular line. But still need to do the research. At MyHeritage, things are pretty slick there. You can look at View Tree to the right of your match name, or you can click on the View Theory below your match's information. So I'm going to demonstrate both. Clicking on View Tree, I get this very small tree, but I recognize the last names in this couple. I know that one of the Collier siblings of my great-grandmother married a Harris. So to try and check this out a little bit, I'm going to click on Lena May, since Harris and Joyce up here are private, and we'll look at Lena May's profile. And when I go to Lena May's profile, I notice that she was born in Newbury, Middlesex, Ontario, Canada. That's a bingo. Definitely a village connected to my Collier family. But I still need to do research to fit this line of descent into my own tree, and MyHeritage gives me the link right here to go out and start researching. From the theory of family relativity, you can see that 4 trees have been stitched together to get to my match, Richard. So we have my tree. Then we go over to the Trubshaw family website. Then we go to the family search, World Family Tree. And then we come to the Helgren website in MyHeritage. So when you look at this, Richard turns out, if all these linkages work out, and we have the ability to go in and look at these records and double check if the linkages are correct, then Richard is my third cousin once removed. I'm going to stop at this point, and I'll ask Anne, do we have any questions yet?
Nobody has put any questions up, but I have one.
Okay.
At the beginning, you said that mitochondrial DNA wasn't very useful. So they do that on 23andMe, and it seems to me that it can be useful for ruling things out. Yes, lots of people will have the same mitochondrial DNA as you, but if they don't, then you know that at least they're not on your direct maternal line.
That's correct. And 23andMe, I believe, is just the haplogroup reported, but you don't actually get mitochondrial matches. People's names, the way you do with the autosomal. That's my understanding. I don't have a kit in 23andMe. As far as I'm aware, only family tree DNA actually gives you test results and matches, the haplogroup, and then a list of matches.
Okay, so now Clint Myers would like to know, where have you had your DNA tested?
Okay, so my very first test was in Ancestry. And then because my mother couldn't spit in a tube, she was too old and had dementia, I had to go to Family Tree DNA and use a cheek swab for hers. So I downloaded my DNA from Ancestry and uploaded it to Family Tree DNA so that I could see my matches to her. I then uploaded that DNA up into MyHeritage, which you're allowed to do. There's a small fee at both of those places to unlock tools like the chromosome browser. I have not tested at 23andMe. I have tested at Living DNA in England, and the first test I did, they got wrong. They somehow I ended up with a full sibling match to somebody down in the States who was definitely born before my parents even met each other. So not a half sibling, a full sibling. So I complained at I was at Roots Tech when I found this out, and they gave me a new kit, and I got significantly different results on the second kit there. Unfortunately, Living DNA, their matches, they are there, but it's not very robust yet. I think we need to give them several more years to work on tools before we really spend time there. But their geographic split out of English DNA is incredible.
Now, Nancy Cutway is asking about GEDmatch. Are you going to talk about that later, or if not, she wants to know if you've uploaded to GEDmatch.
I have uploaded to GEDmatch. It's not included in this talk. The reason being, this talk started off at 1 hour and 30 minutes, just with the 3 companies, and I had to really squish things down.
Okay, that's it then.
Thank you. I'll continue on. So the next thing you want to do is review the genetic clues, and that includes looking at the predicted relationship looking at all possible relationships, the shared amounts of DNA, the segment length, the longest segment length, and chromosome browsers. So here we go. On Ancestry, you click on the number of centimorgans and segments on your match page. When you are in your matches page, you can find the probabilities of the relationships. This is DA again, who I know is my second cousin, but look at all the relationships and even less probable relationships that could be explored if I didn't know who he was. This table was generated by an Ancestry algorithm, and I have a third-party source that I like much better, and that's the Shared Centimorgan Project, initiated by Blaine Bettinger. He's one of the leading genetic genealogists at this time. So I'm going to show you the tool over on the DNA Painter website, dnapainter.com/tools. Don't worry, this is going to be in my handout, which I will be doing after this presentation, so it'll be up on our website, hopefully within 1 or 2 days. So here are some of the tools at not genetic genealogy, sorry, at DNA Painter. And the one we're going to look the most at is the Shared Centimorgan tool, which has just been updated. Now what this is, Blaine has an ability or a place on his website where you can submit actual proven relationships and put in the number of centimorgans that those people share. And then he takes the numbers and crunches them, and we get, this is real-time data. This isn't generated by some computer. So we're going to just go and we'll be looking at this page in sections. So from DA's entry over at Ancestry, I've entered his centimorgans of 207, and up popped a relationship probabilities. We have to thank the DNA geek, Leah Larson, for doing these probabilities. So start with the most likely relationships. It helps if you have some idea of the age or generation of the person. If you're about the same age as the test taker, then you can rule out the removes right at the very start and put them back in later if needed. So you can see in the first section, just about the only thing left is the second cousin level. Now there's a possibility it's a half relationship, but I'm going to start at the second cousin level. Moving down, you'll see that the chart now just has some highlighted relationships. And I'm going to, here's a bigger view of the second cousin square. The second line tells you that the average amount of DNA shared by second cousins is 229 centimorgans, but the range that has been seen in real life examples is 41 centimorgan all the way up to 592 centimorgans. That's a pretty big range. Now, new in this version, we can actually click on the square, and we're going to see the dreaded bell chart. I don't know if you remember that from high school. You always hoped you were up in this end of the bell chart and had your marks moved up. At any rate, I think they've done a really good job in attaching these. They've put down how much centimorgans I actually entered in the tool. So we're going to look at the values across the bottom. 207 centimorgans falls between these two bars you go to the bar to the right, and at the very top, you can see the number of tests that include 207 centimorgans. That's pretty good. 1,000 tests. 1,000 samples were given to Blaine to crunch numbers with. This really does bear out the probability of second cousins. Now, out on the shoulders here, this side and this side, these are less likely amounts of centimorgans. Not impossible, but less likely. So if you are looking at another relationship and you end up out here, there were only 9 samples that hit in the same range as you, and I'd start looking for a different relationship for the person you are researching. I really like this tool better than the ones at the company because it's more visual, and I'm a visual person. At Family Tree DNA, there's a column on the match page that shows the shared centimorgans and the longest block and the relationship range. But I couldn't find a chart of probabilities at all. So we have to go off to DNA Painter Tools again, and we're going to check out the match of 351 centimorgans that's showing as a first cousin to a third cousin. Here are all the relationships, and when I look at the most probable, there isn't anything in here that's on my same generation. Like there's no full first cousin or full second cousin. This indicates to me that maybe this match is a generation removed. So my first guess is first cousin once removed. I usually don't look at half relationships till after I've exhausted all the other ones. Out here on the chart, you'll see that first cousin once removed, either going up a generation or down a generation from me, are very definite possibilities. So when I click on first cousin once removed and look at the, they call this a histogram, I entered 351. That falls right about here. I look to the bar to the right, and it was part of over 1,000 samples, very near to the exact center of the histogram, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable that this is where I'm going to research this person in somewhere in my lines as a first cousin once removed to me. And truth to tell, I actually know who this person is, and he's actually my mother's first cousin. Going on to my heritage, we have estimated relationships. If you click on the question mark beside the estimated relationships, they do have a chart showing the possible relationships of second cousin once removed all the way up and out to fifth cousin. This one I don't know, but he's one I'm going to have to research. We're moving on to chromosome browsers at this point. Now, Ancestry doesn't have a chromosome browser, and they don't even tell you what your longest segment is. And the value of a longest segment is if you share approximately the same amounts of DNA with maybe 3 or 4 of your cousins, the person to look at first is the one with the longest segment, because the chances are good they are closer to you than the others are. So this is at Family Tree DNA. This is their way of being able to compare matches. So here are the 4 top matches to Mr. Trimble. Now I know these people. So you are looking at a paternal aunt, a double first cousin, a maternal first cousin, and a maternal second cousin once removed. So the first thing you do is check mark in the box to the left of the people you want to compare. You're allowed up to 7, and then you click the chromosome browser button. You can tell these people are pretty closely related to Mr. Trimble. Lots of lovely color in the chart. Not too many that match each other, which I sort of expect because the orange person on the bottom line is on the paternal side. The blue and blue-green are on the maternal side. Now, mind you, this person, who is his double first cousin, matches him on both those sides, maternal and paternal. But anyway, you see lots of close matching there. Oh, there's a quick look at the double first cousin. They come up looking like a 3/4 sibling. In this case, the company calls them a half brother, and a few other possibilities. Here's someone, a Charles, who's listed as a 2nd to 4th cousin. He's only got one little piece. So I'll tell you right now, he's not going to get a lot of my attention. On MyHeritage, you go into the Tools menu, and there you can find the chromosome browser. And what you do, it comes up with you, and then you click on people you want to see matches to, or you can search for the person's match name and click on them there. You want to get rid of someone, you hover over their square and click minus, and it takes them out. And this is the first 6 chromosomes on the browser. We have a Russell Corey, a Jack Albert, and a Gordon, random Gordon person from my list. And you can see they don't match each other. They were just 3 random examples that I chose. Now, here I cheated because I took my mother's results and I compared them to her 2 daughters and her cousin, because I wanted to show you what triangulated segments look like at MyHeritage. They are the one company that will actually box in triangulated segments for those of you who like to do chromosome painting. The most important step that we're now going to talk about is finding a shared match cluster or a genetic network. You're going to use the shared matches tool on you and your best first second cousin match to start with, and then you can keep going down the list of your known matches. This way, you can get a list of people who all share DNA with both of you, you and your known cousin. Since he's a known cousin, you know where he is in the tree, you know the branch he's on, and therefore you can call this that branch's genetic network. Now you still have to do your genealogy, and you have to watch out for your removed cousins. On Ancestry is really slick. I love their colored dot system. It helps you cluster the genetic networks, and it helps you work with those clusters in a page. If you hover over the cursor of one of these colors, it will actually show you the name. If you go to Add and Edit Groups, these are the names I have chosen. You can edit these. You can redo whatever you're calling them, You can change colors. Play with that. It's fun. Then you go and you click on your second cousin's, proven second cousin's name or picture. Get into their match page with you, and then click on your shared matches. This brings up a list. At the beginning, nobody else is going to have colored dots, but you can look at the people that have common ancestors. You can look at people who have a number of people in the tree and just confirm which line they actually are on and add the dots. But you'll notice I also added dots to people who had extremely small trees or no trees. That's because I'm including them in this cluster. The theory is that if you match with me and DA, somewhere along the line, there's a common ancestor, or at least some sort of relationship to our common, to DA and my common ancestor. It may end up being several generations back from the common ancestor, but they are related somehow. So you keep repeating this method with all your other cousins that you've figured out. You put dots on every one of those shared matches. 25 centiMorgans and more. I wouldn't spend the time on putting the dots on people that share less than 25 centiMorgans. They're going to be too far out on your tree. Going back to your match page, here's a quick way to actually find more cousins. You want to go and click on common ancestors, and that's going to give you a list with all the common ancestor leaf hints, so you can work with those trees and check out how exactly your match falls in your tree. That will put more colored dots in your system and have you, then you have the ability to add other colored dots to the people who share with you and that particular match. So you build out your groups very quickly on Ancestry, and you can access your groups really well on Ancestry because they have a filter tool here that you can click on, and then here I've picked my Burns and Doherty ancestral couple, and I get a list that I can then put the dot on. Going to Family Tree DNA. The tools you have there are in common with and not in common with. Here I've chosen Betty Lou, who is a known cousin. I click on the In Common With button, and I get a list. I'm not worried about these two people, actually these three people, because I paid for their tests. My two sisters and my second cousin. Mary Ellen has a tree, so we can go explore that. If you click on the Not in Common With, it will bring up a list. This can sometimes be useful. It was particularly useful when I didn't have a tree attached, because then I could actually pick my mother and do Not in Common With to see my paternal relatives. Now, I've actually got some paternal relatives because I've linked some of my known cousins to my tree. And that ability is right here at Link Matches. Here's my cousin DA again. He's in both Ancestry and Family Tree DNA. Don't forget the matrix tool that I showed you before. That can be helpful to show how your matches are related to each other and can help you narrow down the line. At MyHeritage, I really like how they've set up their matches page because you get a lot of information here. Celia, her age is in the 70s. She's not too much older than me, so she may be on the same generation as me. She's from England, okay. And Collier is a name that's in my tree and her tree, and they did come from England. So we're going to click on Review the DNA Match, and this is where they bring up the shared matches. Again, I really like how they've laid this out, because on this side, I can see my relationship and centiMorgans to the shared match. And on this side, Celia's relationship and centiMorgans to this match. And this can be useful because if Celia has a closer relationship to one of these matches than I do, I can sort of start fiddling with the tree and finding out exactly which branch she might be on. Also of note, here's something that's unique to MyHeritage. This little icon here means there is a triangulated piece of DNA. Oops. Sorry, I thought I must have taken out that slide. If you click on that icon, it will take you to the chromosome browser and show you the triangulated piece of DNA that those of you who like to do chromosome painting, it will help you immensely. Out on MyHeritage, there is a tool. This is out on my main DNA page. The tool is called Auto Clusters. They have licensed this tool from a website called Genetic Affairs, which is a paid website. They have licensed it. It's under their tools. When you click Explore, it will tell you about auto clusters, what it is and what it will do. It's, in essence, trying to make genetic networks for you. Each colored cell shows you people who match in common with each other. Now, if you manage more than one kit at MyHeritage, as I do have a drop down and I can actually generate an auto cluster for anybody on my list by clicking this. Now, when you click it, it goes off site and generates your report and emails it to you, but it's not instantaneous. It will take hours. When you get it, you'll have 3 files. The first 2 are comma-separated values in spreadsheets and very confusing. I recommend you open the one that's ends in the ending HTML. It's one that's going to open in your internet browser, and you will get an animated fly-in of your matches into a chart like this one. Here's one that I did from Genetic Affairs several years ago, and I linked Genetic Affairs to my Ancestry account to get this. Across the top and down the side, you've got the people's names, and on this side, you've got the cluster number. So there's number 1, and it has 23 members. When you scroll down the page, you get tables like this showing you the cluster, who's in the cluster, how many centiMorgans they share with you, what's the longest segment they have with you, do they have a tree on the website, and how many people are in that tree, and you can click the link and go to that tree, and your predicted relationship, and then any notes you've made on that tree. The username is also hyperlinked, that you can go back to see them on the website. So at this point, I'll pause for questions and a drink of water.
Okay, Sybil Cloutier would like to know, she mailed off her DNA to MyHeritage. Do you think the coronavirus will affect getting the results back?
Yes, I do. I think there will be a bit of a delay. I would imagine, though, that they are still processing stuff, but at a slower rate. And I really don't know if the lab that they use would be involved in COVID testing, which would take some time. But yes, I would expect a delay.
Okay, another question from Janice Nickerson. She was wondering if you could explain how to read the chromosome browser. So when you see all those little colors, can you explain what they mean?
Okay, let me go back, see if I can. Boy, that was way back, wasn't it?
Well, there you go.
There's one. This particular one, okay, first we'll start with centiMorgans. There is actually a very complicated definition for centiMorgans. It involves distance and number of SNPs and relationships and different things like that. I don't bother myself with that. I just pretend it's a physical distance. So almost like centimeters. Okay. So all along, I don't know if you've ever seen a chart of DNA. When they type DNA, and I have a cousin who is a geneticist, they actually take a photograph under the electron microscope, cut out the pieces of DNA, and then they order them in pairs according to length. That's an imposed order. Chromosome 1 is the longest one. And then they, as you can see, they decrease in size. Now that size is in millimicron, whatever, but that is how they actually do it. Keep in mind that each of these, the gray area at the back of the chromosome browser is, in this case, me. Okay? I am gray. So these people are all being compared to my DNA. Each line is actually represents a chromosome pair. And the companies can't tell maternal from paternal. It's all jumbled up. But in this case, Russell Corey does have a segment. Can't tell me which is, whether it's maternal or paternal, or whether it's matching me on my maternal paternal. But he shares a length. And if I was in the real company and hovered over this, it would tell me how many centiMorgans that length is. Okay? And that happens with everybody else. When you get one like this, okay, Alice Jessie is being compared to Allison, my younger sister, and Susan, my younger sister. You're going to get a 50% match, but it's going to show up as the whole line because it can't separate maternal and paternal for either person, my sisters or my mother. So I cheated here. Okay. The actual, all along this whole chromosome, there are way markers. And they're in like millions. So when you actually go to a company and find the actual report that gives you the sections that you match someone on, it will give you beginning and end points, as I said, in millions and tens of millions of markers. and how much centimorgans you share. So if you really want to go up and practice DNA painting, you know where to put it and how long to put it on DNA Painter, for instance. Does that help?
Okay, I have another question from Gary Gauthier. He wants to know, what is the significance of those clusters you were talking about, and the size of the clusters? You've got that auto cluster report.
Okay.
Yes. Why is that good?
Well, the bigger the amount, the bigger the box, the more people in it. The more people in it, the more likely they are to be closely related to you. So you can go and investigate these people, and they're probably more related than these people down in the smaller boxes. And when you look at the report that comes up below, I mean, you could go cross-eyed trying to magnify in far enough to read the people, and then have to do a lot of scrolling to get across and see who all they match. But the idea is that everybody in cluster 1 matches each other and probably matches on the same line of your family. And if you don't know someone, but all these other ones are matching on the Collier line, then that's where you start looking. You don't have to look at 100% of your tree to try to fit them in. By looking at the clustered group, you cut your work down by 25%, 12%, and that's the whole purpose to doing match clusters.
Okay, that's all I have right now.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that was actually the heart. The shared matches is the real heart of working with your matches. But you better organize them too, or you have to do the work all over again. So whatever testing company you use, label your DNA matches with what you've learned about them. Use the notes field, and every company has one. And use the sorting tools, however much your company gives you. So at Ancestry, on the shared match page with DA, for instance, there's a little paper icon, and you click on that, and you can then get a note field that you can start writing in. Now, what I like to put in there, I like to put the relationship. And even if it's just a suggested relationship that I haven't worked out, I'll put it in there and I'll say third cousin through the through lines hint, or fourth cousin according to theory of family relativity. I'll also possibly put in this person is in a cluster with a known second cousin DA. Whatever helps cement in your mind what you know about this person at this point in time. If I correspond with them, I'll put the date there, or sometimes actually I will use a spreadsheet. I like Excel. I find that a little better, and I can sort it according to my needs. But you can place it here. This one's got about 500 characters. I haven't actually tested the other companies out. So I will put the relationship. I will also try and put the most recent common ancestor if I've got it figured out. If they're using a username and I corresponded and they've given me their real name, I'll put it in here. the first couple of lines in Ancestry, the first couple of lines will show up on the match window, but there's also a Chrome extension that you can use called Med Better DNA, and that's going to be in the handout. And it will actually expand your field and let you see the whole number of lines of your notes, which is really handy and really helps with Ancestry DNA. I really find Ancestry DNA pretty superior with this dot system. In Family Tree DNA, it's the icon with the pen. So you can put things in like second cousin from the John Brown and Elizabeth Collier through the daughter Elizabeth. And I also threw in here, because Family Tree DNA shows your X matches, I've put that in as well. Something here, you have to remember to click the check mark before you exit or you'll lose your note. Over on MyHeritage, there's a little icon up here. It's gray if you have no notes, and it's pink if you do have notes. So something like this: first cousin once removed, the number of centiMorgans, the common ancestral couple, and which line it's down from. Now, you've made notes, and some of these people you don't have a tree. So you got to communicate. So here's some quick tips on that first contact. And your key goal here is to get them to answer you. You want to find out who's reading their messages or reading their email. And you want them to at least talk to you and get to trust you. If you include way too much information, they're going to feel overwhelmed, and they're not going to answer you at all, especially if they're not genealogists. So keeping it short, well, that could be a problem for us genealogists. But keep in mind, people don't care it took you so long to find them. You have a problem, and here's how you've tried to resolve it. They don't want a long, long story. Keep it short. Ask something really specific, something along the lines, I see that we may be related on the Collier line. Do you know if that name appears in your tree? And at the very end, put something that's a really easy way out. If they don't have time to go look at their records or they're busy right now, just say, if you don't have time, that's okay. Just write back and let me know you're there. Keep it short and sweet. How are you going to contact them? Well, Ancestry and MyHeritage have internal email. That can be a little problematic. Some people don't even know it's there. They don't check it. I believe at one point, the app on the iPad and iPhone didn't even show the mailbox. Some people don't even know they have a match list because all they tested for was the ethnicity report. By adding that line, let me know you're there, you'll at least know the people who look at their messages. Family Tree DNA actually uses your actual personal email. Some people like that, some people don't. I like it because I know it's going to end up in their inbox, and at some point they will see it. So keep track on when you've corresponded with somebody, because you don't want to send them a message every day. You might want to send it every 4 to 6 months. Just, hi, are you still there? Have you noticed? Have you found? That sort of thing. You don't want to become a stalker at all. There is a tool at DNA Painter called What Are the Odds? You can put in the line linkages and centiMorgans of all your matches, and then you can propose theories. I consider this more an intermediate level tool. It's really useful for testing theories and figuring out which one is the most probable. But if you're overwhelmed with what I've already said, you don't need to do this, and you don't need to do chromosome mapping at the initial stages. Wait till later if you want to. I am touching on this, though, because there is a free webinar tomorrow at Legacy Family Tree Webinars, and it's by Johnny Pearl, who is the developer. It's tomorrow at 2 o'clock. You still have time to register. It's free and will probably be free until next Monday for the recordings. If you're not a subscriber, you won't get the handout. But if you are, you will. And Johnny is a real up-and-coming guy on the tech side of things. So he's got a lot of tools. You saw several of them. And this What Are the Odds tool, I'm just beginning to get into it, so I consider it an intermediate level item. And after all that, you have to do genealogy, because DNA on its own does not come with your ancestor's name attached. It won't tell you anything unless you have the paper trail. So you will need trees, you will need records and sources, you will need correspondence, and all the usual tasks of doing genealogy. You may even need to build out a matches tree, contact them, share genealogy. I can't emphasize it enough. You have to do genealogy. So in summary, get to know your company's tools, use your best matches to make clusters or networks. Use third-party tools like the Shared centiMorgan project. Communicate with your matches and do your genealogy. Sorry, folks, that was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but it's less than it was. So now I'm open for questions.
We do have some questions.
Oh, good.
Okay. Lori K. would like to know if you've used that new feature on Ancestry with 3 dots in a blue circle that appears next to your match name.
Actually, I have, and it's a way of linking your match into your tree. And you go on your shared page, and up beside your person's name and relationship to you, there's a little circle you click on, and then you have to, I've done it once for DA. I forget whether it takes you to your tree and then you drag the person onto your tree so that it merges. Those were some of the slides I had to cut out. But I have done it and it's fun.
Karen Harrison says MedBetterDNA is a separate website. I'm not sure what she means, but
it's not a separate website. It's a Chrome extension, so you have to be using the Chrome browser. You go to the Chrome extension store and you download it. It ends up as a little icon up on the top right of your internet browser. And you click on it after you've gone into Ancestry, and it will expand those notes out for you.
Okay, have you had any experience with finding adopted or illegitimate children who have high centiMorgan overlap but don't know the names of their parents or grandparents?
I'm no expert in that field. I have to admit I've never even tried. In theory, by doing those clustering, you should hopefully be able to assign those people into a family line. Then you do genealogy and locations to see if you can find anything that matches and go from there.
Are there ethical issues with doing that?
Yeah. There are DNA angels out there on the website I think there's Facebook groups who actually do this all the time and have a lot of experience with it. I don't know. I can't address the ethical side of it.
I'm kind of thinking that people who don't want to be found probably shouldn't send their DNA into these things.
Well, the problem is the cat's kind of out of the bag and their cousins are doing it.
Mm.
And that really is kind of the ethical question. You do have to consider both sides of the equation. The desire of the adoptee to know their genetic heritage. Maybe they're doing it for health reasons. Maybe they're doing it just to fill a gap in their heart. But then you've got the people on the other side of the equation. Do they want to know about their children? Were they sperm donors and they were guaranteed, not to have their name ever published? It's a real tricky question, and one I'm not really prepared to discuss.
Okay, so Alan Campbell wants to add something to what you said about when you're messaging people. You might want to send your email address so that maybe you could get messages from them when you're not logged into your Ancestry or whatever.
Oh, Alan, wonderful suggestion. That is so true in Ancestry and MyHeritage. And I do that. Let's take this out of the company's messaging system. I can't send you any attachments any other way. I have pictures and I need to send it to your own email address. There are different ways to do that, but it's an excellent idea.
And one last question from me. What was the name of that new television program that you and Steve were talking about that relates to this? I watched it, but I can't remember the name.
Okay, it's The Genetic Detective. It's tonight at 10 p.m. on, I think it's ABC.
Right.
And I watched the first episode. Actually, I recorded the first episode last week and watched it later. But it's Cece Moore, and who is one of the leading genetic genealogists, and how she helps law enforcement agencies use genetic genealogy to track down their killers. She didn't actually work on the Golden State killer case. But about that time, she had a request from another law enforcement agency. And once the whole issue of GEDmatch being used by law enforcement agencies had broken in the news, she figured, okay, she might just as well start helping.
What I found about that show was the first part of the show wasn't like, it seemed more like these other, crime shows, and I almost turned it off. But then the second half of the show was all about the genealogy and the genetics, and it was more interesting.
Oh, they got to dress it up for TV. Man, do they have to. They have to make it dramatic.
Okay.
Well, that's all the questions I see here.